The views and opinions expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Reproduction or dissemination other than for the purpose of education or information without the express written permission of the Phoenix Research Institute or Nova Society Media is strictly prohibited.
I'd like to welcome everyone back to the Nova Society. I'm Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and I'm here with my guests, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Mark Bound. Today, our panel will be once again answering questions from our listeners. Yay? Yay! Huh.
Thank you, listeners.
Yay! Yes, thank you to our listeners. The Trump-Harris debate was last night. Yes, and I know many people watched it. Who does the panel think won, and why? And will this debate result in a change in the election? What are your thoughts? Start with you.
This is low-hanging fruit, Mark. You go ahead.
Okay, so who won the debate? I think it's across the board obvious.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris won the debate. Of course, if you listen to Trump, who was in the spin room,
right.
Which was very odd. Usually the candidate that's on the debate stage does not go into the spin room unless he's trying to, clean up the mess on aisle number 5. But he was right in there. And of course, he was touting that all the polls that he saw said that he won by like 86%, 90%, this, that, and the other. I don't know what polls these are. I have not seen any of those. They're probably written in crayon, so I don't put a lot of faith into that. But definitely, there's no doubt that Kamala Harris won. It was absolutely a disastrous performance on his part, and I think that's really as far as why did she win? Because she was focused, she seemed presidential, and he seemed like the angry uncle at the dinner table during Thanksgiving. Nothing but grievances, nothing but I. The whole world's against me. I think I'll go eat worms. It was just a disaster. And many of the comments he made, and I've said this before, if you closed your eyes and listened to this, you would say, that's a crazy person talking. And if this was any other country, if this was a candidate for higher office in any other country, and we as Americans were listening to this, these were his talking points, we'd be saying, oh my God, please don't let them put him in office. And but unfortunately, who knows? Will it change the election? I think this is a possibility. I hope it does give Kamala Harris a bit of a bump. Because right now, whenever we talk about how close the election is, we're only talking about the Electoral College. I truly believe that in the popular vote, she'll probably beat him by about 15 million votes. Easy. But even if you win by 15 million votes, you could still lose the Electoral College. And that would be an issue. That's my feeling on it.
Yeah, it's impossible to disagree, I think, with that. The one thing I will say is that Trump's performance wasn't, to me, an outlier. I mean, if we hadn't been focused so much on Biden in the last debate, we could have been focusing on the crazy stuff that Trump was saying in that debate also. But unfortunately, Biden took the focus away from him. Harris did a really nice job of sort of letting her face speak for herself and just kind of giving him the look, a number of different looks, but allowing him to continue on and on and on. I know Trump had to run to his emotional support Fox this morning to complain about the moderators, fact-checking him and not fact-checking her. If they fact-checked him 2 or 3 times more than they fact-checked her, they probably could have done it like 500 times more. There was not one single honest thing that he had to say at all, and you could go down the list. Maybe they didn't do a good enough job of saying, we asked you a question, Ms. Harris, can you answer the question? And Trump certainly could have done that as well. But the stuff that was coming out of his mouth, that has been coming out of his mouth for about 10 years now, is just such crazy talk. And hopefully the American people won the debate by finally understanding that this guy is unhinged. He's not very bright. He doesn't seem to understand what tariffs are or how they work. He is totally beholden to dictators. That was a really nice point that she scored there. Probably the best exchange was that Putin would have his eyes on Poland already if he was the president for a second term. And I thought that she did a pretty good job. He was himself as usual, and the American people need to begin to see the emperor has no clothes.
I think I read that on a Facebook post last night.
Did you? The emperor has no clothes?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a frightening thought, but I'll try to keep that out of my mind.
It is.
That visual, yeah.
There are debate coaches that come on. And of course, if you're a Republican, you're going to twist yourself into pretzels trying to explain how Trump won. Listen to Marco Rubio last night. He was saying, oh, Trump won. But then again, Lindsey Graham kind of gave a fairly, which was very surprising, an honest assessment that it was a disaster. That's really an important thing when you start hearing from some of the Republicans, even those that are sycophant, saying that, hey, this was not good. This was rambling. This, as Scott said, this was Trump being Trump. Some people were making comments about the fact that the mics were turned off, but you could still see that he was trying to interrupt. He tried to do a clever thing when he said, I am the one talking. Does that sound familiar? He tried to be clever. I don't think it landed at all.
He even did the there you go again.
He even did that, yes.
From the Reagan Carter debate.
Reagan years, yep.
Yeah.
It was the difference between prepared and ad-libbed. When you're going against a sitting vice president who is a practicing attorney, who was a prosecutor, and who was a attorney general for the largest state in the union, ad lib is never a way to go. It's sort of like it's like probably going like pro se in a courtroom against an attorney general of a state, especially a state like California. It's not going to end well. It is just not going to end well. One of the first rules they teach you in the first year in law school is never ask a question that you don't already know the answer to. And now, although she wasn't asking the questions, her answers were really a way to like drag him in and let Trump be Trump. And that was probably the thing that was the most impressive, and the reason that she won the debate. Do I think she was flawless in it? No, I don't. I don't think she was flawless. But when you're comparing things, when you compare the apples and apples of this situation, there's no doubt in my mind that any debate, I think they're called judges, that do it for colleges and high schools and stuff like that, would have scored this. Almost, if it was a fight, they would have stopped it. It would have been the mercy rule, because every time he opened his mouth, it got worse.
And just one last thing. From my point of view, as a former PR professional in Fortune 500 company who prepped many an executive for interviews, including the CEO of our company with the Wall Street Journal, you teach them to acknowledge the question and then get to, as quickly as possible, get to the message that we want them to deliver. And that's exactly what Kamala Harris did. So when somebody complains that she didn't answer the questions, well, you know what? The questions are the questions, but the message is really what she wants to get across. And she did a pretty good job of that, I thought. The quibble that I have, is probably more than a quibble, is that she didn't bring up some of the things that she might have. And I posted this on Facebook to you, I think, Mark, right before the debate, was I wanted to see her mention Project 2017, which is the precursor to Project 2025, and not let him off the hook by saying, I have nothing to do with that, because there was a Project 2017, and he did most of that. He did almost 65% of it in 2017. I don't know if he went on to 2018 and did more of it. There was a Project 2021, and it didn't ever happen because he did not win the presidency. And Project 2025 is as scary, but not more scary than any of those plans. And he would do it in a heartbeat, I think. And we've got to prevent that from happening. The other thing is this, and I want to say this on this podcast because I am so tired of not seeing this in the news. On his last day of office, Donald Trump pardoned a cop killer who was serving life without parole. Trump commuted his sentence as a favor to a friend of Jared and Ivanka's who had done some work in the White House. He let a cop killer go. The name of the perp is Jamie Davidson. He handed a .357 Magnum to a younger person and told him to kill this cop during a drug buy bust sting operation that this federal officer was working on. And he got life in prison without parole, and Trump commuted his sentence. I don't know why this isn't a bigger story. I'm infuriated by the fact that it's not a bigger story, because we all remember Willie Horton, and we all remember the devastation that caused to Mike Dukakis's campaign, and this is so much worse.
And you're right, Scott. It would have been nice if we had heard about 2017 and 2021 and more about 2025. And I'm not really going to defend Vice President Harris on this, but let's remember, you are who you are. She's a lawyer. And in a court of law, generally you try to stay to the point of the questions that are being asked. And I will say that's, like I say, it was not a perfect performance because that lawyer training came in. She did not deviate very much from the theme of the question. And unless the moderators ask that, I would have liked to seen the moderators ask about that. I would have liked to seen the moderators ask about, this person that was released that killed a cop. That would have been interesting. Unfortunately, if they ask about that, then they're going to be seen as being biased. That's going to be the general consensus, is they're being biased. Like I say, accountability. There was no accountability in this. Now, yes, there was some fact-checking done, and you're right. If they had fact-checked Trump as much as they should have, that would have been the entire debate. Also, keep in mind, the debate is, an hour and a half? That's all it is. There's only so much you can get in, and there's a certain number of questions they want to ask. But I would argue that because Kamala Harris is a trained attorney, having worked in the court, been in a courtroom setting, judges are not really good about you going off track on things. That's kind of frowned upon by judges, and I think she was trying to stay in that lane. But it would have been nice. It would have been nice. This would be the questions that when you get Trump all by himself in one of those town halls, that to have somebody actually ask the questions, but guaranteed what he's going to say is, that's a nasty question. You're a nasty person. And, same old fifth grade complaint that he's got. And I will say this, last night, I did post on Facebook, which I rarely do. I made 7 predictions. And of those 7 predictions, all 7 of them came true. So my bingo card was full last night. I was able to call bingo.
Hey.
So that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our sponsors for this episode. BH Conflict Resolution Services, a full-service dispute resolution firm offering expert and cost-effective mediation services to couples, groups, and businesses. BHCRS can be reached at www.bhcrs.com. We'd also like to thank our podcast partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, and Podkite, who does all of our analytics. iHeartRadio, where people get their music and podcasts, Apple iTunes, the largest source for music and podcasts on the internet, Spotify, the most popular source for the Nova Society. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms. We'd like to thank all of our listeners. Without you, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a comment, question, or would like to be a guest on the Nova Society, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. Always remember, the power of society is knowledge. So for Dr. Scott Gershworth, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Be well, and we hope to see you again next time.